Welcome back once again this week, everyone. We're glad that you have joined us for part 2 of our fantasy football running back rankings for 2018. It's the position so deep that we needed 2 entire episodes to cover it all. Either that or we just really love the position. And it might be a little bit of both, quite frankly. This week, we're going to get into some of the deeper players at the position that might not be on the forefront of your mind here, but can certainly go a long way in being good complementary pieces to helping you win a fantasy championship in 2018. And that's what it's all about. Nobody wants to come up short in their fantasy leagues. So we're diving in deep tonight. Before we get into anything, I saw Ant-Man and the Wasp last night. So I'm on a little bit of a Marvel high right now, all caught up on everything. I'm not going to get into any kind of spoilers or anything, but it made me ponder this question this afternoon. If you could have, you're going to keep your life basically, but if you could have the abilities and powers of one Avenger or Marvel character, who are you going with?
Batman, no question.
That's not Marvel.
I don't care. I'm still taking Batman.
Wait a second. So what you're telling me is you don't want any superpowers. You just want to be like a nerd.
Money. I just want money. I want to still have my life and all the money I ever would want and gadgets.
Well, in fairness, he did self-train pretty much in hand-to-hand combat. So
no, I don't want to fight anybody. I don't want to help. I don't want to fight bad guys. I just
want to be a rich guy, and you don't want to be Batman at all.
Correct.
You want to be Bruce Wayne and forget about Batman.
Is that an option?
Well, number one, your answer is DQ'd because it's not a Marvel character. And number two,
this Marvel character,
it's Tony Stark.
Just be Iron Man.
Yeah, the correct answer for him is Iron Man.
Like, I'll be Iron Man.
Number two, the premise of the question is, whose powers and abilities do you want? I said you're keeping your own life,
but I get his money though, right?
No, you get the powers and abilities. So, like, he would get his suit.
I don't want any of them. I changed my answer. I'm out.
This is a tough question. Like, I feel like the Marvel characters, like, a lot of them have similar powers. Like, obviously, like, Thor's a god. But, like, what's the real difference between Thor and Captain America other than, the hammer?
And American. He's American. That's the difference. That's a big difference.
Thor's an alien.
I understand Thor's an alien, but now, anybody's powers from the Marvel world, huh? Probably the Hulk.
That's a waste of a pick.
That's not a waste of a pick. Super big and green. Every time I get mad, this whole podcast on a regular basis would just be me turning into the Hulk.
This whole podcast would have been one podcast because you smashed your computer and you don't have Tony Stark's money to buy a new one. So you only made it one episode.
Iron Man's the correct answer, I think. Just because, like, number one, like, somebody comes at you, like, you have an iron suit. So good luck with that. Like, I might not be as strong as the Hulk, but I'm at least going to be, have the intelligence of the suit, be able to fly,
it's not a
be able to shoot missiles.
Oh man, I
it's
want
not
to shoot
superpower.
That's not a superpower.
I'm trying to be Wolverine. X-Men are Marvel.
Yeah,
Wolverine's the man. I'm essentially immortal.
You're already grouchy all the time, so
I'm in a pretty bad mood usually.
It's like he said, you can have your own life. You're like, I'm Wolverine. Who do you want? Who do you want to beat? No, that's right.
I changed my mind.
That's who I am, except if someone hurts me, it just hurts. Like
I changed my mind. I want to be Deadpool.
Myself.
I want to be Deadpool because I want to be super sarcastic and mean to everybody.
All right.
That's who you already are. What? This isn't. You guys yelled at me for not playing the game. You're just picking who you are already. What traits do I have? I want to be that guy.
All right. Let's get into some running back talk here. A little bit more of our wheelhouse than.
I want to be Todd Gurley.
I'll allow it.
That's who I want to be.
He's a superhero.
I'll allow it.
He has more superpowers than Tony Stark. I'll say that right
correct.
now.
And just about as much money.
Right.
All right. Listen, last week we hit you with our top 20. So if you did not hear that podcast, number one, you're going to want to go back and do that. Not necessarily, stop listening now, but you're going to want to check it out because it was a lot of good content and you'll get our top 20. Tonight, we're going to talk about numbers 21 through 40. Like I said, it's a real deep position. It's a really important position in fantasy. So we wanted to make sure we gave it enough time. So let's start out with number 21 through 25 and discuss these guys. We've got Alex Collins, Jay Ajayi, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, and Marlon Mack. All right, let's start out with Jay Ajayi, because last year, here's a guy who a lot of people had high hopes for. He was going to be the lead guy finally. We've got a pretty big point of contention here. It's a talented player behind a really good offensive line in Philadelphia. So, why do we have such a big variation of 2 points here? Deal's got him at 26th. Miles has him up at 19th. So, I'll go with Deal first. Like, what are your concerns here to have him at 26?
My biggest concern is that the committee is just too deep. And that's really, right now, July 22nd, we're still a ways away. We don't really know how the depth chart is going to shake out. I know he came over midseason, wasn't fully involved last year, but it kind of worked for them. So I don't know why they would stray far away from the offensive game plan they had last year. Keep running by committee. Now they have Sproles back, fully healthy, hopefully. Another time with Clement. I like Clement's gameplay. They still have Smallwood and Pumphrey. I don't know which one of those guys are going to last, but they have a lot of bodies there. So I don't know how much they factor in, but there's a lot of mouths to feed either way. And if Jay gets the bulk, I like him a lot. I'm just concerned they split pretty evenly again, and that's why I have him back at 26.
Yeah. Are you going to agree? Because I'm going to kind of refute that a little bit.
I was going to refute it as well a little bit. To an extent, I understand the committee approach here. And I'm not saying that they're going to sway from that, but you're adding in Darren Sproles and removing LeGarrette Blount, which means that really the bigger thing here is that the goal line carries are going to go to Jay.
Maybe.
More than likely. And the other thing is that he's your big back. Like, he's not as big as Blount, but he's your between the tackles, first and second down back. The kind of like what they had Blount with, and then they would bring in him as a change of pace. So I think he kind of moves into the Blount role that we saw from last year. And then, Clement is going to give you pretty much what he gave you last year, especially in what we saw in the playoffs, catching the ball out of the backfield. And then Sproles is your change of pace guy. So I don't really know how much I'm higher on him now than I was probably about 2 months ago, but definitely I think he's got more of a definitive role than you're letting on at this point.
As far as frame goes, Clement's a bigger back. He's 220. He's the between the tackles guy.
They showed a ton of willingness to put Corey Clement in the game in the red zone and inside the 5. He got a lot of inside the 5 kind of carries as the season wore on. So honestly, that's my fear for Ajayi, is that Clement is going to vulture some touchdowns.
Yep, and he's not getting catches. So,
but yes and no. I mean, he's not going to get 5 catches, but he's not Jordan Howard out here, But my point is,
I don't know how much higher he is though.
Well, I guess we'll see. But it's funny how numbers work. Like, he gets 3 catches a game. That seems pathetic, but that's 48 catches,
right?
You know what I mean? So you don't need a lot. But my point is, when he went to Philly, it took him a few games for he and the Eagles to kind of mesh, and he had fewer than 10 carries in his first 4 games. Last 3 games that he played in the regular season, he had 80 total yards, 89 total yards, and 73 yards and a touchdown. Then in the NFC playoffs, he had 98 yards and 99 yards in those 2 games. Now, the Super Bowl, he took a backseat to LeGarrette Blount. For whatever reason, the staff kind of just felt Blount was getting it done, which was true. He had 14 carries. Ajayi only touched the ball 9 times, but he had 57 yards at 6.3 a clip. So it felt like as he was there longer, obviously, he was more involved and he was more ready with what they were doing. So I just think with Blount gone now, I actually expect Ajayi to kind of pick up where he left off. Those 6 games, he had 16 touches per game. That's really good for where we're talking. I mean, you bring up the committee thing. Everybody's in a committee from here on out. That's why they're ranked in the 20s and 30s and 40s. But I just feel like if they're going to give him 16 carries a game, and then in that time frame, Blount only had 9. Well, if he picks up 5 of those, 4 of those, you're talking about a 20 touch per game ceiling. That's a ton down here. And more importantly, and this is why I'm kind of surprised you're a little lower on him, Deal. He was consistent when he was getting touches.
Yeah.
5 straight games, 80, 89, 73, 98, and 99 total yards. So, I mean, it's not like he was putting up 90 on the ground. but every week, 65 and 30, 60 and 35. Who cares how they're coming,
Yeah, I don't care. Yards are coming. He only had 24 receptions last year, 27 the year before. So
Right.
I don't know. That's not going to climb. At least
he takes a ding in PPR, but I think in half, especially standard, I definitely don't care because it's all yards because he's effective as a receiver. He's not going to get a ton of catches, but he gets it done when he gets the ball.
Just more about the committee thing, that these other 9 that we have around him are in less committee. That's my concern.
Fair enough.
He has 2 really good backs with him that have a very specific skill set.
Right. And my last word on him, I think, especially with Wentz coming off the ACL, they're going to lean on these backs a little bit more, probably early in the season. I mean, probably.
Yeah.
So I just think this RB2, 3 section, a bunch of rookies, bunch of question marks. I like the consistency that Ajayi brings. As an Eagle, we covered very much as a Dolphin, not very consistent. Yeah. But as an Eagle, he certainly showed that. More importantly, they as an offense show consistency.
And we'll see how it looks in the preseason. He very well could move up for me.
They could be that classic. Listen, we're not re-signing this guy. It's a contract year. He's going to touch the ball 320 times.
Right.
It could happen.
Definitely.
And I do want to say this too. Nobody's even brought this up. We talk about Darren Sproles being in this mix. Listen, he is a truly special player, and he's had a whole year of rest now and recovery. Dude's still 35 years old. Like, what can we really expect from a 35-year-old Darren Sproles at this point?
If he's healthy, I expect more of the same that we've seen.
Clement is absolutely a scare there in terms of timeshare and committee, but how much can we really expect from a 35-year-old Darren Sproles? Well, I mean, we're being realistic.
If the videos that he's posting on Instagram are not doctored in any way, I'm expecting a lot because he looks ridiculous. Like, this time of the year, everybody likes to say, like, oh, so-and-so is in the best shape of his life.
Right.
Darren Sproles is in the best shape of his life. Like, he doesn't have to tell you.
I can't remember who put it on Twitter to give credit, but I read it earlier this week. Somebody said, I literally cannot wait to hear how many players are in the best shape of their life next week. As camp start, there's like, how bad a shape were you in before?
All right, so we had Ajayi 22. Average draft position right now is running back 22. So just coincidental there. So look, Miles is not convinced seemingly that Derrick Henry is as high of an RB3 as the rest of the group is. Deal, South, and Rocco 21, 22, 23. Miles has him back at number 28 right now. Gives us 2.3 points of variation on a guy who, he's flashed a lot of talent to this point in a timeshare. You would expect maybe he's kind of your guy in Tennessee, at least, outside of the passing game. So, Miles, thought process there?
Yeah, I think first I'll just say this is not a guy where I have him lower than everybody and I'm going to stand on a table and, bang my fists or whatever about it. Right. There are guys, but there are guys where you'll do that. And this Derrick Henry, it's just I want to see how the situation's run. It's a brand new offense with Matt LaFleur coming in. I love that for the offense. I want to see how much I love it for Derrick Henry. I want to see how much they're going to involve Dion Lewis before I commit here as a new guy. LaFleur should help them as a whole, but I actually think it helps Mariota, it helps Corey Davis a little bit more than it helps Henry. It's more of a passing game, and Henry's actually a really solid receiver. Mm-hmm. We look at big giant and we're like, oh, he's stiff. No, he's a really, really good receiver. Always has been. Yeah, really so that should help him. This is not a situation where I'm 28 and I'm lower than everybody and I won't own Derrick Henry. I just kind of want to see how things work out in camp before I have him much higher. I don't like Dion Lewis at all, but people in the NFL do. So I kind of just want to see how that works out. Maybe I'm just wrong on the guy. I don't like him, but people like him.
Yeah, he's actually going higher right now than most people have him ranked. We've got him obviously here at 23 overall. He's 22 overall nationally ranked, and he's being drafted as running back 18 right now. So, 5 spots better than even where we have him. I just think people look at what he's brought in that kind of timeshare role with DeMarco Murray over the past couple of years, and they kind of look at it and say, he's got to be the guy now. You know what I mean? Like, there's no more loyalty to DeMarco Murray. There's no more, hey, we paid him a ton of money to bring him in. He's really good. And I think that he's going to see a lot more touches. He's going to be more productive. And you hit the nail on the head. For me, like, the reason why I like him here, because he's a sneaky good pick in a PPR, half PPR, because we look at the size of him, but I mean, he's got good hands, so he's going to be productive there as well. So I think they're going to use him to his full potential.
Yeah.
And similar to what we just said about Ajayi, when he does get the catch, he's very effective after the catch. He's not just hitting a 5-yard out and taking it out of bounds after 8. I mean, he's taking screens to the house. He looks good in space.
You need for me to take him down. Space. Yeah, you need for me to take him down.
Right.
I'm not trying to tackle that guy out in space. All right, so
not even with an Iron Man suit.
Well, maybe then. All right, so given his 4-game suspension here, we've got Mark Ingram at 24. What's the right area or kind of the sweet spot to draft Mark Ingram? I guess what level of concern do you have here with this 4-game suspension?
I don't know what the sweet spot is. I'm not concerned. I think he's going to come back and still be effective. But I think if you are confident in him, if you're that guy, you have to take him at this spot. If you think he's going to have the same role and come back and be productive, this is where you have to take him. His ADP right now is 501, which is exactly running back 24 where we have him. So I think that he's probably going to go up because he's going to come back and play. So
I think for me, when you hear suspensions, there are people who get overreactive one way or the other, where it's like, I'm not touching him. Or then there are people who I'm super going to target him because he's going to come back and I'll slide him into my lineup and you suckers will pay. Like for me, if I'm going to draft him, I don't mind it. I don't mind having Ingram at all. I'm hoping he's my first bench player, though. I'd like to already have my running back and flex positions filled so that when he comes back, if he looks good, now I'm in a position of strength.
Yeah.
But if I'm relying on him to be a starter and then he comes back, I'm not totally convinced Kamara is not just going to run away with that backfield. I mean, as good as Mark Ingram is, this could very quickly become Kamara with Ingram coming in to spell him every once in a while. And I don't want that to be my 5th-round pick.
Yep.
No. Here's my biggest thing, and I do have him in the lowest ranked of all of us, only at 26, so it's not like a huge drop-off. But, like, if they just switch roles and Kamara goes to the 280, 300 touchback, and Ingram takes a step back to 200 touches, which I think would still be a lot because Kamara only had 200 touches because he had 81 catches.
81 catches, right?
You know what I mean? So let's just look at the rushing numbers. If it goes from 230 and 120 and they switch, Ingram is not explosive enough to make up for it in the touchdown department. Yes, he had 12 touchdowns last year, but that's because he had 230 rushing attempts. Like, that's why you get 12 touchdowns. He's not an explosive running back the way Kamara is to be able to take a lesser amount of touches and turn them into touchdowns. So I think you need to be real weary, especially because, like Miles said, if they comes back and Kamara has already, cemented himself as the new running back in New Orleans, and he's just going to spell him, you're wasting a 5th-round pick on a guy that is not going to see a lot of time.
I agree in that scenario, but just given their bodies and the players they are, if Mark Ingram is the guy that every time they're in the red zone, or especially when they're in the 10 zone, 1st and 2nd down, he's getting the ball. He still keeps some productivity there because he's scoring some touchdowns.
Yeah, but I'm just worried with the Saints turned to Kamara in that role last year in the playoffs. Yeah. He was their 10 zone back.
Yeah, he might still be. So.
Yeah, so
and not to mention the fact that they're going to score a lot of touchdowns outside the 10 zone.
Well, especially with Kamara.
Exactly.
All right, so we'll put a button on those couple guys here. Talk about number 26 through 30 here. We've got Royce Freeman, Sony Michel, Lamar Miller, Marshawn Lynch, and Jamal Williams to round out the top 30. Lamar Miller is still the clear starter in Houston, at least on paper right now. Have we become jaded with his injuries and some of the underperforming over the past couple years that he's ranked so low right now? He's number 28 for the Goons. He's number 23 nationally. I mean, this is a guy who, by all accounts, should be in a productive offense this year, be the guy getting all the touches. So, what gives here, in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't know. It's another situation where you just have in your mind that he's a disappointing player. So you rank him below guys who might not be disappointing, like Royce Freeman and Sony Michel. I mean, these are guys who might blow up. honestly, we may be wrong here. He finished RB16 last year in half PPR. And he's pretty effective when Deshaun Watson was on the field. He was really nice. Obviously, every running back gets better when the passing game looks that good. But, you say he's RB16. I think to a man, every fantasy player would tell you the running back situation is vastly different than it was last year, both in star power and in depth. So, you could kind of mediocre your way to RB16 in a way last year. I don't think that's a realistic thing anymore. So are we low at 28? Probably. But to tell me he's 23, I don't know. I don't know that I'm going to jump in front of 5 of the guys we already talked about.
Here's my biggest issue with him. He is getting more and more inconsistent as time goes on. And I understand he finished 16 last year, but realistically, in the last 4 years, since 2014, and obviously it's 2 different teams here, but since 2014, he went from 5.1 to 4.5 to 4.0 to 3.7. He's getting worse and worse and worse in terms of yards per carry. The team around him is going to get better, hopefully, with Watson coming back, and that does bode well for him. But the problem is that they're giving him opportunities, they're giving him touches, and he's not doing much with them. That's where the big issue comes in. He had 238 carries last year. You got to be at 1,000 yards with 238 carries. You have to.
Yeah, my biggest issue, he gets so much volume, but it's just not equating to the touchdown totals that I think we sort of expect out of a lead back. He's got 34 touchdowns in his career at this point, spanning 6 years. If you just drill down to the last 4 years, he's got 31. But the more alarming stat is that 19 of those came in 2014 and 2015. So over the last 2 years, he's not finding pay dirt a whole lot, which, I think is why people tend to let him slide a little bit. So I do expect that offense to be better this season. I think if Deshaun Watson stays healthy, I think they'll be able to move the ball. I think they'll score more than they have over the past couple of years. But I'm just not sure how much of that is going to land on his shoulders. So I think this is kind of a good zone for him.
And you know what bothers me about, I just brought up RB16, and it certainly wasn't me trying to convince anybody to draft a guy like that. But there's actually a downside to using finishes sometime, because as a fantasy player, like Lamar Miller might have finished RB16 because he was 16th every week, or 8 points, 8 points, 8 points, 8 points, 8 points, 8 points, 8 points all year. That's not winning you weekly matchups. You need that 16, 17 every once in a while. And with how little a guy like this scores, he's not getting a lot of those. Now, he's not killing you with the 3-point week usually either, which is nice. But I just, it kind of depends, I guess, the type of player you are. And the reason I'm a little lower, I like to take more risks. I like a guy who might score 25 points for me 3 times this year. And I'll try to be smart and avoid the weeks he's going to score 3. I don't like the consistent 8-point guy every week. That's just not the way I like to play. It's not fun. And Lamar Miller's not fun. Let's just put it out there.
Not only is
he might be an okay pick, but he's not fun.
Not only is it not fun, but like you said, it doesn't win you fantasy matchups. Like, just because a guy finished, listen, I got news for you. If you draft a team full of guys that finish 16, it looks good because you have all that, but you're not winning weeks.
Right.
You're just not, because guess what? Most of your leagues don't have 16 teams. So, so that doesn't do anything for you. You need guys that are going to give you top 10 weeks.
I don't want to drive too much.
Lamar Miller gave us one top 10 rushing week last year in 17 attempts.
I don't want to dive too much into roster construction, but you can win with guys like Lamar Miller, depending on your roster construction.
You need a guy or two like that.
Yeah.
But for me in this range, I'm trying to hit home runs a little bit more because this is probably more of a bench situation for me. So I want guys that are going to wow me on bye weeks, and I want guys that I can trade for even more consistent players. Not consistent 8-point players, consistent 13-point players, because I've got, Sony Michel scored 3 touchdowns this week. I'm trading him to someone stupid who wants to give me a more consistent starter, I guess is my point.
Right. All right, so let's talk about Green Bay's running back situation. We've got Jamal Williams here at number 30, and I think as we see the site update here in the next couple days, one of my big typo errors will be fixed, as I had Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones flipped in my rankings, so it kind of screwed things up and made it look a little screwy. But their running back situation has been toxic the past couple years, and when I say toxic, I mean like we tend to think like, okay, this is the next guy. No, now this guy has to be the next guy. No, it's going to finally be this guy. And we keep trying to peg this guy. So let's jump right back on that train and try and peg a guy here. Is Jamal Williams the guy who can break the trend and be that standout back for the Packers in your mind?
I'm not sure the skill set's there. I mean, I like Jamal. I think he's a pretty solid player. He's a nice receiver, which obviously helps when Aaron Rodgers is coming back. But why I think he can, I mean, I'll just say this. I'm not sure Aaron Jones isn't the better player. But when Aaron Jones is out for 2 weeks, if the Packers start nice, they start at home. Both weeks are home. If they start off on fire on offense, Jamal Williams is getting it done because Aaron Rodgers is shredding people. Why would Mike McCarthy and his staff not keep feeding him? Why would they not? Why would they mess around with a situation that's clearly working? Now, I think Ty Montgomery is going to get his. I hope as a fantasy community we don't forget about this guy, especially with everybody slanting more towards PPR. He's going to get his touches. But I think Jones' suspension really gives Williams an opportunity to take 2 games, solidify his role. Jones will still come in and spell him. He's not going to turn into Zeke here and get 80% of his team's carries. But why can't he sort of solve South's conundrum here a little bit with who should we roster from Green Bay? It should be Jamal Williams because he has the first crack at it. And I have no logical reason to believe he won't keep his role.
We made it 29 minutes before we really disagreed here. I'm not saying that Aaron Jones is better or that Jamal. This is a scheme thing for me. They don't care. Like, they're going to play their hot hand every week. And you're right, Ty Montgomery is probably the back you want to own here in a PPR format because he's the one that's going to get those bigger touches. Like, we shouldn't forget about him. But I don't think that either Jones or Williams is, at least to draft in this group of players, that neither of them are going to be consistent enough on a week-to-week basis to be able to, for you to be able to count on them when you need to. Like, you're telling me that, okay, so if you draft him, 30 as RB 30, you're confident in him enough come your bye weeks to be able to run him out there in a flex situation if need be? Because I'm not confident in either one of them enough.
But don't you feel like Jamal Williams has the receiving skill set at least of Ty Montgomery, but with the actual body and physical skill set of a real running back too? So now the project can kind of go by the wayside there a little bit. But the project, when Rodgers is on the field, I'm not going to talk about when Brett Hundley was there. When Rodgers is on the field, the project was working for them.
To an extent. I mean,
he was catching balls.
Right. I mean, listen, Jamal's not the receiver Ty Montgomery is because he's not a wide receiver playing running back, but he is one of the better receiving backs in the league. And as far as the scheme thing, well, 2013 and 2014, I mean, that's a long time ago. It's not forever ago. Eddie Lacy, 1178, 1139. Mike McCarthy was the coach. Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback. They were a passing team. You still had a back-to-back 1,100-yard player. The last time they did commit to a running back, it was effective.
And but he's better than Eddie Lacy.
Yeah, you know what? You say that. I think Eddie Lacy took a really big drop off a big hill, a cliff, for crying out loud.
That's a good thought.
But Jamal Williams, you can't tell me right now that Jamal Williams right now is as good as Eddie Lacy was when he was an 1,100-yard back. You can't say that.
But I haven't seen enough to tell me he's not.
Right. Why can you say he isn't?
Okay, but but that's my point. Where we're talking about him right now in this group with Royce and Sony and Lamar and Marshawn and the 5 guys we talked about before this, I don't trust him anywhere near enough to be putting him in with these other guys.
I know I've certainly been the Jamal Williams truther of the bunch here, and I've loved him since college.
Yeah.
But in games last season without Aaron Rodgers, so with Aaron Rodgers to Brett Hundley's a little bit of a drop off.
Just a bit.
In games where he got 20-plus touches, which are starter numbers, he had over 100 yards from scrimmage every game. He averaged 1 touchdown every game. If you're getting 1,600 yards total out of this guy, that is awesome for number 30. And plus, I know those numbers are only in 5 games, but he looked good in those. And the biggest thing, just going back to what South said, I think we glossed over it. He does combine the skill set of Aaron Jones and Ty Montgomery in one player. They don't need to keep changing guys in and out. And in the 2 games that Ty was given 20 touches, he averaged 71 yards a game. And Aaron Jones, I think he falls from grace here, missing out on those first 2 games. Why would they go back to that guy? I just think that everything leans in favor of Jamal here.
I think short of an injury, Aaron Jones kind of becomes a forgotten man here.
He should.
I wouldn't go that far at all. I mean, we just talked about Ajayi and Philly. This is the same situation to me. I like Ajayi and I like Jamal Williams because it's that role. Aaron Jones is the Corey Clement role. Darren Sproles and Ty Montgomery. It's the same backfield as Philly, and I expect Ajayi to kind of control things, and I definitely expect Jamal Williams to. I'd be much more nervous if there was no suspension, but this 2 games is huge.
I agree.
He's going to touch the ball 20 to 25 games at times in games 1 and 2.
Why wouldn't he?
And if he comes away, Rock, with 220 total yards and 2 touchdowns in those 2 games, why in the world? Why would they turn their back on?
Yeah, but that's a big assumption, though. Like
It's what he was averaging last year.
It's my 7th round pick.
It's what he was averaging last year in games where he had 20-plus.
Yep.
Now he gets Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I know that you're not a fan of the limited sample size, but in fairness, with that limited sample size, I mean, that's right on average. So I'm with Deal. I think that when you put the better quarterback back there, you're going to maximize what he can do.
Changes everything. And I'll say this, maybe just to – I'm a little bit of a middleman between you guys. If Jamal Williams was suspended for 2 games, and I would have Aaron Jones here.
Agreed.
And Jamal Williams back where I have Aaron Jones. It's not that I think – I do like Jamal. It's not that I think he's necessarily a top 30 back. I'm not starting a franchise with the guy. I want Aaron Rodgers running back.
Right. Yep, absolutely. All right, let's take a quick pause here in the middle of this and talk about our friends at Gorb. Look, if you're on social media, you've probably seen the hashtag Gorb. That's GHORBH. It's a movement that is kind of sweeping social media right now. It's all over all my pages. And really what Gorb is all about is giving you that message that in life, you've got 2 choices. You can either get hungry or be hungry, hence the name Gorb. Look, getting hungry is all about finding out what you're passionate about, what fuels you, what you want to go after, and just going after it full steam ahead rather than being hungry and always wishing that you would have. You can check them out at gorb.com, GHORBH.com. You can find out all about what the message is all about. You can find all the great gear that they've got for men, women, kids, all different colors, styles, sizes. They've got something for everybody. You want to check them out today, gorb.com. All right, guys, let's talk about 31 through 35 here. We're getting into the shank of the evening here, so to speak, with some of these guys. Tevin Coleman, Duke Johnson, Nick Chubb, Chris Thompson, Dion Lewis round out the top 35 here. We're spread out pretty well on Duke Johnson and Nick Chubb. We kind of bounce back and forth here. Ironically, they're just 1 spot apart here in our rankings. So the natural question is, which back has the most fantasy value for 2018?
Wait, this is going to hurt to say. I like Duke. I like Dookie Johnson the most here at a Cleveland's backfield. If for no other reason than he's the only one with a cemented role right now.
Right.
No matter what happens, Duke Johnson's your 3rd down back. And they've used him a lot as a 3rd down back. He's crushing it with his reception. So PPR, obviously, you'll like him. Non-PPR, I probably wouldn't touch the situation unless, as preseason goes, before I draft, it shakes itself out. I fully believe Chubb's going to eventually and maybe even very early take this job. He's just a better player than Carlos Hyde is by a lot. I mean, but we've also seen better players as rookies not be able to figure it out right away. So I want to see how that all shakes out. But, if I'm playing PPR, if I'm playing half, Duke Johnson matters. He has a role. He's great in his role. Ultimately, I won't draft him because he just doesn't score enough for me to be a major player. A couple touchdowns is not worth the catches that you're going to get. But I guess if you're asking me which one has the most value right now, it's Duke Johnson because he's the one I know when he's going to play.
Yeah, and as much as we bang on Carlos Hyde, he finished number 8 last year.
Yeah, I
know he's on a new team in a new situation with a very crowded backfield here, as opposed to what it was last year. But I'm only saying that to say that you're right. In a PPR format, it's got to be Duke because Carlos Hyde, is as much as we bang on him, did finish number 8 last year. So we don't know when. I agree with you. I think Chubb will take over at some point. We don't know when that is, and you're going to waste a pick on a guy who might not see the field until like week 8, or week 12, or if the season gets out of hand, they might go to the young gun. Who knows?
And that's sorry, real quick, my roster construction thing, because I do want to get into that deal. I think we should as often as possible, but my roster construction thing of the two kind of early down backs, I definitely want Chubb more than Hyde because by the time he's playing in real NFL is by the time my bye weeks are starting to hurt me. Week 9 this year has 6 buys, and it's some major fantasy teams. So if he's playing by week 9, I'm pumped to have that to fill in. So I don't want Hyde in a chance of Chubb has taken over by the time bye weeks hit, and I'm stuck with Carlos Hyde doing nothing for me on my bench.
Yeah, especially at their ADPs right now. Carlos Hyde's at 712, running back 36. And then Duke and Chubb are right next to each other, but all the way back at running back 41 and 42 at the first and third pick of round 9. If I'm getting Duke in in the 9th round, I'm really liking that, especially in a PPR. If it's a full PPR league, man, that's awesome. But even half PPR, I'll take him back with my 9th pick.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Duke Johnson going on average running back 35, Nick Chubb going running back 40. Just kind of interesting to me because we're talking about a guy who, if you take one of these guys, they're most likely a first or second guy on your bench kind of situation. So are you taking a guy that, you could play based on a matchup if you needed to with, the PPR element, or are you taking a guy with 6-7 weeks down the line in mind where he may take over that situation? So it really depends on how highly you believe in Nick Chubb, I guess. If he's going to win that job eventually and be productive in that role. So just an interesting conundrum there. At this point, we're into the running back 4 area and conversation for most people, hopefully. But if any of these guys are your running back 3, or you've got to play one of them in a flex role, which one can you most depend on in your mind as a flex, running back 3 fill-in kind of role?
Yeah, that's got to be Coleman for me. A little Tevin Coleman action. I mean, we just talked about the 2 Browns unsure situation. Chris Thompson, I think is an excellent player, but similar to that Duke Johnson, you'll hear this out of me all the time. Those receiving backs don't score enough touchdowns for me to have to rely on them to play every week. Dion Lewis, same as I said about Derrick Henry. I want to see the role. We'll see what happens. But Tevin Coleman has shown in this offense, both coordinators, no matter who's healthy, no matter who they have, he has standalone value as is. He will get his own drive every once in a while. He will catch the ball. He will run between the tackles. But then there's always that chance if Freeman gets dinged up and misses a game or two, which he has a slight history of, he's a top 10 back. So I like the standalone, and then it's almost like you're handcuffing without being an idiot and handcuffing, because I don't believe in that strategy. Right. But it's a standalone value guy that if the guy in front of him gets hurt, you stole a first-round pick here with Tevin Coleman. So I like that pick. If you have to play one of these guys in a flex, that'd be my option.
Yeah, we've got him 31, and he's being drafted as RB 28 right now. So,
we have him 31, and his last 2 finishes are 19 and 22.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, not to bang on the finishes like me and Miles talked about before. Don't always look at that, but he is finishing, in the upper in the upper half of these backs that we're talking about right now. We have him ranked low, but he's got the potential to finish as a top 20 back.
Right.
All right, so each of these backs are considered, timeshare players or in a situation where they have not outright won the position yet. So how hesitant are you to rely on a player who's situational as a flex option? We just talked about a guy like Tevin Coleman. Is that kind of an exception to the rule, or, where do you stand on that?
I'm very hesitant, like very, very, very hesitant. I hope by this point in my drafts, I have my running backs and flex totally filled. And, I'd actually like, we'll get here in a second, I would like to take two of the guys in the next tier over any of these dudes we're talking about right now if I was still looking for a starter. I just hate the situation of I got a guy in my lineup that we're going to look at maybe a 2-touch week, a 5-touch week. The fantasy gods would have to bless you for a 5-touch week to turn into something valuable for you.
Yeah, so we got an interesting question here on YouTube, and reminder that if you're watching live on YouTube, feel free to chime in with questions and comments along the way. Shane wants to know, and I'm going to put this a little bit nicer. Anybody got the guts to take a New England running back? We've talked about this from time to time. For those who might be newer to the pod, what are the thoughts on the New England running back situation? It feels like offensively someone should excel there, but there's always hesitation to draft or rely on one of those guys.
Well, I think you nailed it. I mean, someone's going to excel. And the big issue is we don't know who that is. And I don't even mean we don't know who it is on draft day. We don't know who it is week to week.
We don't know who it is on Saturday.
No, like a couple years ago, we talked about this in the pre-show discussion. Jonas Gray had a 200-yard rushing game against the Colts. He was late for a meeting the next week. He's never heard from again. Yep. We don't even know who the guy is, So we didn't have a question dedicated to Sony Michel. The only knock on him coming out in the draft, he can fumble from time to time. Bill Belichick hates rookies as it is. And then if you fumble, he's gone. We're not going to see Sony Michel. I'm sorry, first round pick or not, Belichick doesn't care. So I probably like Rex Burkhead the most as far as what I'm going to have to pay.
Especially value, yeah.
Will I draft him? I don't know, because he had games last year with 3 carries. No. To answer Shane's question, I don't have the balls.
Oh, you said that.
I don't. I said it.
Is there any position that Belichick is harder on than the running back position? I mean, he expects 100% perfection, and when he doesn't get it, they're gone.
Yeah.
So I mean,
that's part of that's his roster construction, that he knows he has 4 other guys who can do it.
About the same.
Right. I mean, he's not going to ignore Todd Gurley, but he's also never going to have Todd Gurley on his roster.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, to answer the question directly, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Rex Burkhead is my guy because he fits that mold of what Belichick likes and just consistency at the position. He's not going to give you those through the roof weeks regularly, but he's going to be consistent. He could be productive. And the price will be right. You know what I mean? Later on in a draft where you're filling out your bench, you get a guy who's got a little bit of upside there to just be a consistent producer. If you're in a terrible situation, that's the guy for me.
But you're absolutely risking weeks of Sony looks good this week and James White looks good this week in practice.
Oh,
and
sure.
Rex doesn't even see the field. That's what makes me nervous. No matter who you're touching, I can't guarantee you this guy's getting more than 5 touches, even if he blew up last week.
Yep. Dale, do you have something you were going to say there?
Yeah, I'm saying it's not going to come down to this for me, but just where they are right now, running back 25 and running back 26, I'll take Sony over Dion Lewis for sure. In a second, I would take Sony over Dion Lewis. But then there are guys after him, Tevin Coleman, Marshawn Lynch, Marlon Mack, Tariq Cohen, that I'll probably take, especially Tariq Cohen. I love this year. But given this guy is similar to him, I wouldn't hesitate to take Sony.
How do you feel, at least in the beginning of the season, with Edelman out and Amendola in Miami, the prospect of James White, who for the last 2 years has been in the 45 to 50 catch range, and now we'll at least see, I think, some at least spike in the first 4 weeks. And we know Belichick, he'll ride that hot hand. If James White gets on the field and doesn't mess things up.
Yeah, I mean, if. And again, I know by the time you're drafting James White, he's not a team crusher if he doesn't get the ball. You're probably not starting him. But what if in those 4 weeks, Sony comes out gangbusters and looks great? Well, then why are we putting James White on the field ever?
No, I understand that, but we're talking about the fact that he knows what he's got in James White already. We're quick to assume that Sony is the better player, so he's going to be on the field. But that's not how Bill Belichick does things.
And isn't that the greatest wrap up of this whole conversation? What you just said. It doesn't matter who's better. It doesn't matter who you drafted, when you drafted them higher. It's whatever mood Bill is in that day. And I don't say that to like crush Bill. It works.
It's a bad mood. He's in a bad mood.
It works everywhere except
true.
the Super Bowl. Works everywhere except the Super Bowl when you just don't play your best corner for no reason. So,
all
right. Let's round out the running back discussion here. 36 through 40. We've got Isaiah Crowell, Tariq Cohen, CJ Anderson, Kerryon Johnson, Carlos Hyde rounds out our top 40. Crowell is an interesting name here in that he should have the chance to be a lead back for the New York Football Jets. He's 38th nationally. He's 36th for the Goons. If he kind of comes out of the gates here and he's the clear-cut starter for that team, what kind of upside does he have this season?
Not a lot.
It's funny because it's really I guess my opinion is it's strange to say this because Bilal Powell is really effective, but it's like Sean Payton hates Mark Ingram. The Jets hate Bilal Powell. It's like, hey, we'll give him a bunch of touches because everybody's out this week, and he looks like a top 10 running back in the league. And then when the other guys are back, they don't care about him as much anymore. I think Crowell's value is actually tied to the progression of Elijah McGuire. If McGuire looks really good, I mean, and he did in spots last year, and then combine that with Crowell comes out kind of plodding like he did at times in Cleveland, I could see him losing his role really quickly to McGuire. It's just another backfield where I think Powell's role is what it is, and he's going to see his touches. He's going to come in a lot on third downs, but I think McGuire has the ability to be that early down running back, same as Crowell. And if he progresses more and Crowell looks, it could be his job.
My whole thing is I agree with you 100% on that. But the other thing is, as a best case scenario, he's in the exact same situation he was in when he was in Cleveland. Right. You know what I mean? Like, Bilal can absolutely be that Duke Johnson guy. And I know he doesn't have quite the numbers, but 3 years ago he caught 47, and 2 years ago he caught 58. 388 yards exactly both years, and two touchdowns each both years. That doesn't even add into the fact that the last 2 years he's also had 700 yards on the ground. So Bilal's going to get his. So at best, Crowell is probably a 50-50 split with the possibility of it being even less if McGuire is better.
Let's talk about something important. How in the world is Isaiah Crowell barely a year older than Elijah McGuire? It's shocking.
Yeah, he's been around forever.
It's crazy.
He's like a 9-year vet.
And I was going to say, like, I'm a sucker for Crowell, man. Like, look, the guy's only 25 years old. He's flashed a lot of talent on a really terrible team previously. I know that, like, on paper, the Jets don't look that much better, I guess, but, like, there's a lot of talent and upside, and, like, you've got a potential franchise quarterback now. Their receivers have played well. This is a guy whose career high for carries in a season is 206. There's not a lot of mileage on him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I just feel like if he
comes not even out, 26 years old.
Yeah. I mean, if he comes out and he looks good and plays well, I don't know. I mean, why can't this guy be 1,000-yard back? Why can't he be an 8-touchdown guy at running back 36? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I like. He's running back 36. You're taking a lot of the guys we talked about earlier tonight are just as big a risk as Isaiah Crowell, but you're taking him 10 running backs and therefore 4 rounds earlier than Crowell. So he doesn't kill you if he does lose his role to Elijah McGuire and if he looks bad. But I mean, it's funny you say you're a sucker for Crowell. I was last year, and it really burnt me. and that's one of the things you have to fight as a fantasy owner is when a guy burns you, he can't be dead to you.
Nope.
He's in a totally new situation. And I know the national media doesn't expect the Jets to do anything. In a couple weeks here, we're going to be doing our preview podcasts. And I think as a group, we expect the Jets to be a lot better. Yeah. So if they're a better team as a whole and he's the starting running back, I mean, use some logic here. He's going to be better.
Right.
For sure. All right. CJ Anderson is sort of an afterthought to most people at this point, but given how Carolina over the last couple of years has used their backfield, is he worth pursuing to you as a fantasy player this year?
Yeah, absolutely is for me. He's another guy that, I said about Derrick Henry, I want to see what camp looks like. I want to see what preseason looks like. It's crazy because how much I loved Christian McCaffrey coming out in the draft. He's a slot wide receiver. He's not a running back in this offense. Now, Norv Turner might see things differently, or he might see CJ Anderson as a bell cow back, and Turner likes to have those guys in his offenses. I think he could easily deliver running back 3 numbers. I mean, in a hurry in this running offense with Cam on the threat pulling the ball. It's like CJ Anderson's one of those guys everybody's bored of. He had 1,000 yards rushing last year, right. And he's our 38th running back. And he's not going much higher than that in the fantasy community. I mean, you guys have the ADP stuff pulled up. I don't have it pulled up, but if you're talking about down here, guys that could explode and deliver top 20 numbers, of course he could. And I think we're not going to talk about Johnson. I think Kerryon Johnson could too.
Yeah.
Yeah. CJ Anderson right now across, the variety of platforms and sites that are out there, he's going 40.5 running back. So basically almost running back 41. So
he's a starting running back on a really good team.
Yeah. And I think we look at Christian McCaffrey and we think like, man, this is a young guy. He's just getting better. And that's true. But McCaffrey's got a specific skill set. Last year with Jonathan Stewart in the same role that CJ Anderson's going to play, he had 198 carries. He went for 680 yards. He scored 6 times. And CJ Anderson is a better running back than Jonathan Stewart at this point. So I think yeah. But I mean, if you give CJ Anderson 200 carries in that offense, there's no reason to think he couldn't go for 710 yards and score 8 times. I mean,
that's insulting. You just gave him like 3.5 yards a carry.
Right. But I'm saying like, that's like the low,
right. A floor. Right.
So, I mean, that's a floor for a guy who I think is clearly better than Jonathan Stewart was. So I don't know. I just feel like this is the kind of guy that you should be pegging a little bit further down the board here as almost like an insurance play.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, we talked about a lot of guys here at the top 40. We've covered a lot of ground, but one thing that I always like to do is give an opportunity here. Give me a player who we haven't ranked in the top 40 who you believe will make a major impact on fantasy football this season.
I'll go first.
I keep jumping in first, man. Like all night, you guys are like,
no, that's right. No, I'll jump in first, and it's a guy I already talked about. It's the guy that I want to own in the Jets backfield, and that's Powell. I mean, we have him at 42. I've seen consensus of him as low as like 50 and 56. The last 2 years, he finished running back 16 in 2016, and last year, in a somewhat of a down year, finished running back 29. He had over 1,100 yards exactly on the nose 2 years ago. Last year, he finished slightly lower, not playing a full 16 games, at 940. Like, he's got 1,000-yard total yardage potential. He's going to get you 5 to 6 touchdowns a year, which is what has been his average for the last 3 years. Like, this is a guy that, no, he's not going to come in and dominate a league. But you know what? Come like week 9, like when Miles was talking about, when you got 6 teams on bye, this is a good guy to own because he's going to come in and give you, especially in a PPR, he's going to give you 4 or 5 catches plus 7 to 10 rushes, and he's productive with those touches.
Yeah, I'm going to go. Our 45th running back is Giovanni Bernard of the Bengals. I think he's a guy that's way too low on everybody's board. Last year finished running back 29 on a bad offense, and then the year before running back 37 in only 10 games on a slightly better but still kind of bad offense. But when the Bengals were good a couple years before that, which I expect them to kind of rebound this year. I know, Deal, you talked about them last week as you're the Bengals sucker. You're gonna jump in again. Well, this year you're not alone. I'm with you.
Thank you.
Before that, I mean, you're talking about a guy who had 1,200 yards one year. He had 1,100 yards another year, and he had 1,200 yards the next year, total yards. So this is a guy like people are always on the Tariq Cohens and the Duke Johnsons and these kind of receiving backs. Well, Gio Bernard's a receiving back that also gets some nice rushing. I think we all expect Joe Mixon to be really, really good. Everything about the reason we talked about last week with Mixon being good, the offensive line is better. The offense as a whole should be better. The defenses in the division are shakier. Well, that's all true for Gio Bernard too. So I like him to have his role. He's very worth rostering at least because of all these guys. Again, the Dookie Johnson being ahead of him. Well, if Hyde goes down, it's Chubb. If Chubb goes down, it's Hyde. If Joe Mixon goes down, which I have no reason to predict, but if he does, Gio can be an every down running back. So I kind of like that late round value where, again, kind of like Tevin Coleman light. He has standalone value to begin with. And if his starter goes down, he's a top 20 back.
Deal, who you got? I'm going to let you go.
Yeah, I mean, I also had Gio. I don't have a lot more to add on it. Just to piggyback, I've already talked about how I like the Bengals. I've talked about it several years, and it's usually not gone well for me. But this year I like them. I love Joe Mixon, and I think that he can do it all, but I think that they're not going to force him to. I think that they still give Gio the ball. He still gets his, and I don't see any way he doesn't get out of this season with still about 800 total yards, and he's going to get some touchdowns too. So it's a safe pick late in the draft where you can get a guy and say, if Joe doesn't work out, if he gets injured, Gio can come in and hold his own. He can come in and be a decent back, probably RB4 numbers, but even with Joe Mixon on the field, even if he's the bell cow, you're still going to get some points from Gio.
Yeah, and I think what's nice about him, too, just to add one more thing to pat us on the back a little bit, is we're talking – and this will crush me because Mixon's a target of mine, but he's not a sure thing. We don't know that he can handle a backfield. We don't know for sure that he's going to deliver numbers. We do know Gio can play.
Yep.
So, he's not – we don't know that he can be a 1,200-yard rushing back, but he can play. So if Mixon is terrible, but the Bengals are still kind of hanging in there in a division race, why would they not turn it over to Gio?
He could be a 1,200 total guy. He's done that twice. Sure. He's done that twice already.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm going with really far down the list here. Unranked by us, I'm going with Kalen Ballage for me out of
gross.
With the Dolphins. Look,
that's so gross.
Here's why. When you're getting down to this point, you've got to find somebody who has a specific skill set that they can contribute to a team, especially as a young running back. This is a guy 6'3", 225 pounds. But even at that size, he's a pretty exceptional pass catcher. So he's going to be a guy who is going to, be able to slot into a position for Miami where he's going to be able to take a lot of those dump offs. He's going to be used in the screen game. Rookies aren't always fit to come right in and start running the ball between the tackles right away. They've got a situation there where they brought in Frank Gore. They've got Drake there. So they've got the role as your lead back cemented down, where Ballage can kind of find a niche here in a half PPR or PPR. He could quickly jump on 50 to 60 catches this year. And if he could turn those into being productive, he's going to see a lot of the field on a team that's probably going to struggle and have to throw a lot of garbage, quick passes just to kind of stay competitive, try and stay in games, try and get something going with the passing attack. I just think that he's going to pile up a lot of catches. He's shown flashes of being able to be really productive catching the ball and turn it into good yardage as well. I don't know that he's going to score a whole lot of touchdowns, but in a PPR, half PPR, if you're talking about a guy that you're going to take late as maybe a last or second to last pick and have a flyer on him, a guy who has the chance to catch 50 balls, you could do a lot worse than that, in my opinion. That's why I'm going with him in this position. All right, that is going to do it for this week's edition of the show. We've hit on two parts of the running back position here. 40 guys. We wanted to make sure, as I said right off the top, that we covered this position in depth. We feel like it's the most important about position in fantasy football. Listen, we've got a lot of good conversation going on during the live show right here on our YouTube channel. We are actively talking in the chat. People could send in questions. We might not always get to every question or blast every conversation that we're having, but there is really good conversation going on the YouTube channel. Definitely get connected every Sunday night. If for no other reason, you could be a part of that conversation. Check out footballgoons.com as well. You could get started and get active on the forum there. It's a wide open forum to talk about all things fantasy football. You can get lineup questions in there. You could ask specific questions about your draft, your league settings, and you're going to get not only us, but the Football Goons Fantasy Football Goon Squad community is going to be chiming in and giving you advice. You'll get good conversation going there as well. That's what we really want to do. We want to encourage you to be active in having conversation with us all season long on the YouTube channel, facebook.com/footballgoons, on the Twitter @footballgoons. Stay connected with us. And until we catch you next time, we'll see you next week.